Okay, seriously though, there's surely no movie franchise in existence, save maybe Star Wars, that's invited as much passionate and downright insane levels of debate as the MCU. Even a cursory glance online reveals a treasure trove of fan theories about even the most forgettable MCU movies, ranging from the hilariously mundane to the ludicrously grandiose. Yet fans having their outlandish theories about a superhero movie is one thing, but what about when the creative minds behind these films get in on the fun themselves? These 10 theories were mostly suggested by the principal creatives involved with each movie, typically the writers and directors, though occasionally the MCU's resident producer himself, Kevin Feige, chimed in to offer his authoritative perspective. Now, it's important to note that none of these theories are officially 100% canon. Despite being the word of God, most of these filmmakers have stopped short of rubber stamping their theories for sure, allowing them to ambiguously exist in the background without ever needing formal confirmation on screen. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 10 MCU theories that come directly from the creators. Number 10, Cap didn't lift Mjolnir to spare Thor's feelings. Avengers: Age of Ultron. One of the MCU's most enduring mysteries has been whether or not Captain America was actually able to lift Thor's hammer Mjolnir or not during Avengers: Age of Ultron's party scene. Though of course we saw Cap finally wield the hammer in Avengers Endgame, fans continue to debate whether Cap truly was worthy back in 2015, given that he was shown slightly shifting the hammer when he attempted to lift it. But the film's writer-director himself, Joss Whedon, offered up his own theory to a fan who asked him for an answer, telling them, quote, "Did he fail or did he stop?" Given that the hammer doesn't work in degrees of worthiness, you can either lift it or you can't, the implication of Whedon's statement is clear, that Cap purposefully feigned an inability to lift Mjolnir in order to spare his pal Thor's feelings. When Thanos was on a warpath in Endgame though, there was no time for such modesty, and Cap finally got to wield the magical hammer, this time to Thor's relief. Number 9, Baby Groot is original Groot's son, Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn broke the hearts of fans worldwide last year when he went to Twitter to decisively explain the mechanics behind Baby Groot's existence. Though most fans simply assumed him to be a regenerated version of the original, mature Groot, Gunn confirmed that Groot from the first movie who sacrificed himself is indeed dead for real, and Baby Groot is effectively his son. To be clear, Baby Groot is not the same as the original, for even though he will presumably end up resembling the fully grown Groot eventually, he possesses none of that Groot's memories. Number 8, Thanos' sword was made by EITRI, Avengers Endgame. One of the few distinct changes evident in Endgame's 2014 version of Thanos is that he carries around a gigantic double-edged sword, which during his battle with Captain America is strong enough to slice chunks out of Cap's vibranium shield, suggesting it's made of unearthly, exotic metal. On the director's commentary for Endgame, Joe Russo floats his own theory about the origins of the colossal weapon, remarking, quote, "Well, Thanos clearly knew of EITRI." The implication is, of course, that EITRI, the king of the dwarves who created both the Infinity Gauntlet and Stormbreaker, built Thanos' huge sword. Better still, Endgame screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely quickly concurred with Russo, providing fans with an explanation that's about as canonical as they get, even if it's technically not official. Number 7, Peter Parker met Tony Stark as a child, Iron Man 2. A fan theory started doing the rounds in 2017 that Peter Parker actually had a cameo in the MCU many years before the character was ever introduced. The theory dictates that Parker was the young boy who stands his ground against a hammer drone at the Stark Expo in Iron Man 2. Between the expo taking place in Parker's home borough of Queens, the ages lining up perfectly, and Peter obviously having an interest in science from a young age, it slots together very neatly. It wasn't long before Tom Holland confirmed the theory himself, but things got even more interesting when Spider-Man Homecoming's director John Watts declared that he'd actually come up with the theory himself while in pre-production on Homecoming. Number 6, Loki was mind-controlled by Thanos, the Avengers. This theory about the original Avengers movie wasn't fielded out by Joss Whedon or Kevin Feige in a random interview, but quietly introduced by Marvel as a whole late last year, in a way that fans barely noticed. But some certainly did, as perusal of Marvel's official character bio for the MCU's Loki seems to confirm that he was himself subject to the very same mind control he inflicted on others through the scepter given to him by Thanos. The bio says, quote, "Gifted with a scepter that acted as a mind control device, Loki would be able to influence others. Unbeknownst to him, the scepter was also influencing him, fueling his hatred over his brother Thor and the inhabitants of Earth." Loki's inherent penchant for mischief was amplified by the scepter, and it totally vibes with the fact that Loki seems to cool off his villainy in subsequent movies once the Mind Stone is taken out the equation. Not all fans are 100% convinced that a listing on a Marvel website counts as canon, as there's little oversight regarding who writes these entries, but it all makes sense in the world, so it's incredibly easy to believe. Number 5, the Hulk wasn't scared of Thanos, he was tired of helping Bruce. Avengers Infinity War. With Bruce Banner suffering through performance issues in Avengers Infinity War, many fans took the Hulk's absence as proof that the big green dude was scared of Thanos after their one-sided fight at the start of the movie, and therefore refused to face him again. But on the director's commentary for Infinity War, Joe Russo, who didn't write the movie remember, offers up his own thoughts on the Hulk's refusal. Quote, "What makes him unique as a character is there's a host body that is being fought over by two distinct personalities who hate each other, and both want control of the host body. So we thought an interesting direction to take him in is what if Banner, who typically uses the Hulk to solve crisis situations, what if the Hulk were no longer interested in solving those problems for Banner? But I think ultimately what it is that he's tired of playing hero to Bruce Banner." The theory of course dovetails quite neatly into Endgame's fusion of Banner and Hulk, where after 18 months in a gamma lab, he's able to put the brains and the brawn together. Number 4, Talos knows about the multiverse, Spider-Man Far From Home. And now for by far the freshest theory on our list, coming to light following the release of Spider-Man Far From Home and the climactic post-credits reveal that Nick Fury and Maria Hill were actually Skrulls, Talos and Soren in disguise respectively. Naturally, the film's treatment of Mysterio seems to imply that the multiverse he and Fury spoke of doesn't actually exist, but director John Watts has a rather different perspective on the matter, and one that revolves entirely around Talos masquerading as Fury. Quote, "I do think about the multiverse thing. People were really excited about it, and we're not saying that there couldn't be a multiverse in this movie. We're saying that what Jake is saying, what Mysterio is saying in the movie, is bullshit. But there's something that I think about is the fact that Nick Fury, who's actually Talos, completely believes this story about the multiverse. It makes me wonder, now this is off the book now, but like, does that mean that Talos is aware of some sort of multiverse? But he seems to accept it. This is of course pure informed conjecture on Watts' part, but the logic tracks pretty solidly that Talos, as Fury, wouldn't blink at the mention of the multiverse if he knew that it did in fact exist. Number 3, the Infinity Gauntlet is used by wishing, Avengers Endgame. The precise mechanics of the Infinity Gauntlet aren't ever really made clear during either Infinity War or Endgame, beyond its potential to wreak major havoc or bring about miraculous repair depending on who might be wearing it. But in post-Endgame, the Russos have discussed the nature of the Gauntlet at considerable length, while offering up their own opinion on quite how it all works. For starters, when asked about how Tony Stark was able to obliterate Thanos' army without killing 2014 Gamora, who was technically a member of his army, Anthony Russo said, quote, "The argument could be that Tony wished away all the evil, the enemy," while pondering what that meant for Gamora, who, per a deleted scene, is shown to be still alive following Stark's finger snap. But in more overt terms, Kevin Feige talks about the wish aspect of the Infinity Gauntlet when addressing how the Hulk managed to undo the blip and return all the dusted victims safely back to Earth. He said, quote, "If people were in an airplane when they were dusted, they didn't return at 35,000 feet. They didn't fall to their deaths because Smart Hulk is smart, and when he snapped, you can wish for whatever you want, and you can wish for everyone to come back safely. Done." While many fans speculated that the gauntlet simply reacted to whatever the user's wish was in that precise moment, the movies have been relatively cagey about confirming quite how it works, so it's nice to hear a response that's as close to as official as you could ask for. Number 2, there were always two Caps in the MCU, Captain America Civil War. Surely the most debated aspect of Avengers Endgame is the ambiguity over Steve Rogers traveling back in time to live out a happy, normal life with Peggy Carter. Did he end up living out his life in the original MCU timeline, or did he create a parallel timeline by traveling back? Amusingly, the Russo brothers are completely at odds with screenwriters Marcus and McFeely on this, for while the Russos believe that Cap had to create a new timeline in order to live out his life, the writers have a very distinct theory about how the original timeline could juggle two Captain Americas at once. Quote, "I would like to believe that through some sort of bullshit time loop paradox, throw in the words you use when you're bullshitting science in a movie, some sort of quantum paradox, that there are indeed two Captain Americas in the MCU timeline, that Steve Rogers, who looped back in time, has therefore always been there, and that he's living somewhere else in the movies you're watching. And what I really like to believe is there's an old man sitting in back at Peggy's funeral in Civil War, and that's old Steve Rogers watching young Steve Rogers carry old Steve Rogers' wife up to the front of the church. Can I explain it scientifically? Not really, no. It's a fascinating, brain-scrambling idea, especially as an elderly gentleman bearing a decent resemblance to old Cap can be seen as acting as one of the pallbearers for Peggy's coffin in Captain America Civil War. This is one of those wonderful things that will likely never get a formal on-screen confirmation either way, but there's enough there for fans to subscribe to whichever version they prefer. If there really are two Caps on Earth during the entire MCU though, it sure does recontextualize the franchise in a fascinating way. Number 1, Gamora's soul was trapped in the Soul Stone, but not really. Avengers Infinity War. This is an especially fun one because it saw the Russo brothers hurriedly confirm a major aspect of Infinity War's plot, only to have to walk it back days later after they realized it had been misrepresented by the internet at large. While holding a Q&A at Iowa City High School on the week of the release, the Russos were asked about Thanos' brief post-snap interaction with young Gamora. Joe Russo effectively suggested that Gamora was trapped inside the Soul Stone, which many fans interpreted to mean the pocket dimension from the comics known as Soul World. But following the online hubbub over what this implied for victims of the snap, that they were also sent to the Soul World rather than actually being erased from existence, Russo had to offer a corrective to his prior remark. Quote, "That moment when he clicks his fingers sends him into the ethereal plane inside of the Soul Stone where, as a part of his quote-unquote hero's journey in the film, he has one last moment to convey a sense of guilt about what he's done. It illustrates what a complicated character Thanos is. So, to clarify, it's a spiritual representation of her, and obviously that's something that the Soul Stone has the power to do. I wouldn't read much more into it beyond that." Basically, Joe Russo opened up a huge unwanted can of worms and then very quickly and succinctly decided to close said can, even if many fans had already run away with the original theory and didn't even see his retraction. And there you have it, folks. That was 10 MCU theories that come directly from the creators. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at @USlyDollU. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.